History of China. China is a magical nation with a unique culture, customs, and legacy of ancient civilization. One of the world's oldest civilizations is Chinese culture. Minerals that are nearly 5,000 years old. It was written down for the first time around 4 millennia BC. The Yangtze River and Hwang are the birthplaces of Chinese civilization. It was also the place where the earliest Chinese towns and national unions were formed from the ancient farming communities. East Asia contains the nation of China, officially known as the People's Republic of China, PRC. At almost 1.4 billion people, it is the second most populated country in the world. China shares the most number of geographical borders with Russia, spanning the equivalent of 5 time zones and encircling 14 nations. Including an area of around 9.6 million. China's land borders are roughly 22,800 kilometers to the east, Mongolia to the north, and Russia to the north. AST, Kazakhstan, the Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan to the northwest, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, and Bhutan to the west and southwest, and Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam to the south. Rebels defeating Imperial Chinese soldiers during the 1911 Xinhai Revolution, which overthrew the Qing dynasty. Prehistoric China. Homo erectus inhabited the region more than 1 million years ago during the Paleolithic period, which is when Chinese civilization first emerged. A 1.27 million year old archaeological site can be found in Yangtze province. Next, the Neolithic period, which began about 10,000 BC and contains remnants of the first millet farming in China. Even settlement along the famous Yangtze River is said to be around 8,000 years old. In the latter half of the Neolithic age, the establishment of the Yellow River civilization led to the establishment of the Yangtze culture, which is known to have yielded the most significant sites from the era. Is estimated to be 8,000 years old. The Yangtze culture emerged in the second part of the Neolithic era, following the establishment of the Yellow River civilization, and is credited with producing the majority of the era's major archaeological monuments. List of Neolithic cultures of China. The Neolithic cultures of China that have been discovered by archaeologists are listed below. They are arranged from oldest to newest in chronological order. 28 kb, 594 words, 1451, November 13, 2023. The Neolithic cultures of China that have been discovered by archaeologists are listed below. A graphic representation of these cultures follows them, arranged chronologically from earliest to last. Diorama on the Yangtze, Neolithic China. This image could have imperfections as it's either historical or reportage. Caption: when the woman wants to grind any corn, she kneels down, and, taking both hands the convex stone, she rubs it up and down in the hollow of the lower stone with a motion similar to that of a baker pressing down his dough and rolling it in front of her. Corn stones are stone instruments used for manual material grinding. They are applied in pairs. The higher moving stone is referred to as a hand stone, and the bottom, stationary stone is termed a quern. To grind cereals into flour, they were initially employed in the Neolithic era. A passage taken from Primitive Man. Yangtze culture. In China, the lowest plateau beside the Yellow River was home to the Neolithic Yangtze culture. It is called after Yangtze, the first representative town of this culture to be unearthed, which was found in Henan province in 1921 by Swedish archaeologist Johan Gunnar Andersson, 1874 to 1960. This culture existed from approximately 5000 BC to 3000 BC. He, Shaanxi, and Shaanxi provinces were the primary centers of the culture's flourishing. Principal websites incorporated. Diorama of Yangtze culture life. Jiangzhai and Banpo. The Pailigong, Jiayu, see separate articles. Dadawan and Sishan cultures preceded the Yangtze culture. The culture of Longshan came after it. 3 distinct groups, the Banshan, Majiayao, and Makang, are related to the Yangtze culture that originated in the northwest and are distinguished by the kinds of pottery they made. Sources: Metropolitan Museum of Art, Wikipedia. In China, the lowest plateau beside the Yellow River was home to the Neolithic Yangtze culture. It is called after Yangtze, the first representative town of this culture to be unearthed, which was found in Henan province in 1921 by Swedish archaeologist Johan Gunnar Andersson, 1874 to 1960. This culture existed from approximately 5000 BC to 3000 BC. Henan, Yangtze, and Shaanxi provinces were the principal centers of the culture's flourishing. Two important locations are Yangtze and Banpo. The Polygon culture came prior to the cultures of Dadawan, Sishan, and Yangshao, Jiahua, see separate articles. The culture of Longshan came after it. Three distinct groups, the Banshan, Majiayao, and Makang, are related to the Yangshao culture that originated in the northwest and are distinguished by the kinds of pottery they made. Sources: Metropolitan Museum of Art, Wikipedia. Diorama on the Yangshao, Neolithic China. An ancient civilization known as the Yangshao culture flourished between 5000 and 3000 BCE in what is now central China, mainly in the provinces of Henan, Shaanxi, and Shaanxi. The name Yangshao comes from the name of the village where it was first found. It was initially discovered in 1921, and thousands of sites have subsequently been found. The most significant website, Banpo, was found in 1953. Banpo is an archaeological site in the Yellow River Valley, east of Xi'an, China, that was found in 1953 by Shixing Bang 1. It holds the ruins of multiple well-kept Neolithic settlements, including Jiangzhai, which has been carbon dated to between 6700 and 5600 years ago, about 4700 to 3600 BCE. 2345 A ditch, likely a protective moat, measuring 5 to 6 meters, 16 to 20 feet, in width encircles the 5 to 6 hectares, 12 to 15 acres, of land. The homes had thatched roofs that overhung and were made of wood and mud in a round shape. They were seated on flimsy bases. It looks like there are places for communal burial. Banpo site edit. The settlement was surrounded by a moat, with the graves and pottery kilns located outside the moat perimeter. Many of the houses were semi-subterranean with the floor typically 1 meter, 3 feet, below the ground surface. The houses were supported by timber poles and had steeply pitched thatched roofs. According to the Marxist paradigm of archaeology that was prevalent in the China during the time of the excavation of the site, Banpo was considered to be a matriarchal society. However, new research contradicts this claim and the Marxist paradigm is gradually being phased out in modern Chinese archaeological research. 7. Currently, little can be said of the religious or political structure from these ruins from the archaeological evidence. Matriarchy at a glance. A matriarchal social structure is one in which women predominantly occupy positions of power and dominance. More broadly, it can also refer to power over property, social privilege, and moral authority. Though those definitions hold true for English in general, there are certain differences between meanings that are specific to feminism and anthropology. Matrilocal, matrifocal, and matrilineal societies can also be mistaken for matriarchies. Although some people would classify any non-patriarchal system as matriarchal, most scholars do not include those systems in their definition of matriarchies. The Xi'an Banpo Museum was constructed on the site in 1957 with the purpose of conserving the archaeological material. 9. Banpo culture. The Banpo culture, the initial stage of Yangshao culture, originated at Banpo. Similar archaeological sites like the site at Banpo are regarded as belonging to the Yangshao culture's Banpo phase, which spanned the 4th and 3rd millennia BCE. Banpo was dug up between 1954 and 1957. Pottery innovations edit. The potter's wheel was introduced to China by the Banpo civilization, although other cultures kept using coiling methods until the end of the Yangshao period, when the potter's wheel became more widely used. 10. The first Chinese pottery kilns were located in Banpo. 10. The Banpo's designs frequently feature geometric shapes along with anthropomorphic or animal characters. 10. Banpo is an archaeological site in the Yellow River Valley, east of Xi'an, China, that was found in 1953 by Shi Xingbang I. It holds the ruins of multiple well-kept Neolithic settlements, including Yangtze, which has been carbon dated to between 6,700 and 5,600 years ago, about 4,700 to 3,600 BCE. 2345 A ditch, likely a protective moat, measuring 5 to 6 meters, 16 to 20 feet, in width encircles the 5 to 6 hectares, 12 to 15 acres, of land. The homes had thatched roofs that overhung and were made of wood and mud in a round shape. They were seated on flimsy bases. It looks like there are places for communal burial. 6. Banpo site. The settlement was surrounded by a moat, with the graves and pottery kilns located outside the moat perimeter. Many of the houses were semi-subterranean with the floor typically 1 meter, 3 feet, below the ground surface. The houses were supported by timber poles and had steeply pitched thatched roofs. According to the Marxist paradigm of archaeology that was prevalent in the China during the time of the excavation of the site, Banpo was considered to be a matriarchal society. However, new research contradicts this claim and the Marxist paradigm is gradually being phased out in modern Chinese archaeological research. 7. Currently, little can be said of the religious or political structure from these ruins from the archaeological evidence. 6a. The site is now home to the Xi'an Banpo Museum, built in 1957 to preserve the archaeological collection. 9. Banpo culture. The Banpo culture, the initial stage of Yangtze culture, originated at Banpo. Similar archaeological sites like the site at Banpo are regarded as belonging to the Yangtze culture's Banpo phase, which spanned the 4th and 3rd millennia BCE. Banpo was dug up between 1954 and 1957. Advances in pottery revision. The potter's wheel was introduced to China by the Banpo civilization, although other cultures kept using coiling methods until the end of the Yangtze period, when the potter's wheel became more widely used. 10. The first Chinese pottery kilns were located in Banpo. 10. The Banpo's designs frequently featured geometric shapes along with anthropomorphic or animal characters. 10. Banpo pottery kiln. Banpo pottery made on a potter's wheel. Yangtze traditional court-marked amphora, Banpo phase, 4800 BC, Yangtze. The Chinese history may be divided into 3 periods. Pre-imperial China, the dynasties of Xia, Shang, Zhou up to 221 BC. History of pre-imperial China. Pre-imperial China, the dynasties of Xia, Shan, Zhou up to 221 BC. There is not enough research done on Chinese history prior to imperialism. Emperor Yu the Great is credited in the annals as being the founder of the first Chinese Xia dynasty. This dynasty's representatives ruled from 1989 BC to 1756 AD. Shaanxi province was home to the Xia center. The only thing that is known about the Xia dynasty is that secular and clerical monarchs shared state authority. However, by the conclusion of the dynasty, a secular ruler merely exercised ceremonial authority. It's interesting to note that the first Chinese calendars were created by the Xia dynasty's rulers and were thereafter reintroduced in China. The pre-imperial period of Chinese history encompasses the histories of the Xia state as well as the Shang, Shangyin, and Zhou dynasties. Considering the age of China, a great deal of information about these dynasties' history is lost to time. Regarding the Shang dynasty's chronology, precise information is lacking. Beginning in the 18th, 16th century BC and lasting until the 12th, 11th century BC is the reign of this dynasty. It is thought that the members of this dynasty were nomads who practiced totemism. Because they revered the earth spirit, which represented the feminine, their internal organization was fundamentally matriarchal. The Shangyin state covered a sizable area that encompassed parts of the provinces of Shandong and Anhui, as well as Shaanxi, Shaanxi, and Hubei. The ruler's authority served as a representation of the political system, but tiny princes were also in possession of plenary powers. Many archaeological discoveries from the Shangyan dynasty have been preserved and are on display in Chinese museums. Soon before the Shang state began to decline, the Zhou dynasty emerged as the dominant force in its western frontiers, displacing the Shangyan dynasty. The Zhou tribes were cow breeders, but they were able to become sedentary within a few centuries. More research has been done on this era of Chinese history. The dynasty ruled between the 3rd and 9th century BC. Its capital, Yangtze, was situated close to Xi'an. But when a barbarian assault threatened in 770 BC, the Zhou emperor relocated to Yangtze, Luoyang, giving up the former capital's land to his ally, who formed the Qin Empire there. The Zhou dynasty period was marked by constant wars for the territory and weak central authority. China entered the Warring States period in the 5th and 3rd century BC, at which point the Zhou state as such vanished and its territory was split up into 7 kingdoms: Wei, Zhao, Han, Qin, Qi, Yan, and Chu. Later, Hwang, the king of Qin, brought them together. To Imperial China, Qin dynasty 221 BC, Qing dynasty 1911. History of Imperial China. Imperial China, Qin dynasty, 221 BC, Qing dynasty 1911. In year 221 BC, Hwang, the Qin state united disintegrated China ruler his power and became the first emperor of whole China. That moment marked the beginning of the second period of the Chinese history, the Imperial one. The Qin dynasty existed almost 10 years, however, despite this short period, Hwang managed to do what nobody could do before him, to unite China, developing it into a powerful state. Under the Qin dynasty, the construction of the Great Wall of China was finished, a single system of the army management was established, a great number of economic reforms was introduced. However, upon the emperor's death in year 210 BC, China entered an age of internecine war again. In 202 BC, Liu Bang, Chu state's commander, seized the power in China and founded a new dynasty of Chinese emperors, Han, which existed until the 3rd century BC. One of the most outstanding emperors from this dynasty was Wu of Han, Han Wudi, during whose reign Confucianism became a ruling ideology in China. The Han Empire existed up to 220, until it was overthrown as a result of a rebellion by commanders. For several centuries China sank into epoch of rebellions and individual empires. However, in 581, the founder of the Sui state seized power and united China again. It was the reign of this dynasty, when the construction of the well-known Grand Canal, considered nowadays one of the new wonders of the world, was started. In addition, this dynasty contributed much to the establishment of the management system able to ensure the integrity of China. However, the Sui dynasty sank into decay very soon due to numerous devastating military campaigns. It was replaced by the Tang dynasty. The Tang dynasty was ruling in China from 618 to 907, which went down in the Chinese history as the epoch of highest peak of medieval China. Jiaozu, the dynasty founder, pursued humane policy, aimed to the development of art and culture. This was the epoch of emperors poets who patronized artists, poets, and thinkers. However, the Tang dynasty also decayed by the beginning of the 9th century. Since that, a period of internecine wars and race for power began. In 906, the death of the last emperor from the Tang dynasty started the epoch of 5 dynasties, when the rulers were replacing one after another. This was also a period of invention of a printing machine and introduction of first paper money. A new Song dynasty began to flourish in 960, led by Chao Kuan-yin, who successfully unified most of China under his rule. During this time, China faced a new adversary in the northeast of the nation, the Khitan Mongolian tribes, to whom China was forced to lose a portion of its territory in 1075. Nevertheless, the Song dynasty was regarded in Chinese history as the pinnacle of the nation's prosperity and culture. The Mongol invasion, which started worldwide, was a defining event of the 13th century. The Chinese were the first to be taken prisoner because they were the Mongols' close neighbors. Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, took control of China in 1279 and turned into. The Ming dynasty ruled China until 1644. It was the period when construction and agriculture were developed. Marine expeditions were sent to the Persian Gulf and the coast of Africa. This period also coincided with the active sea voyages of the Europeans, causing Christian missionaries to arrive to China, and in year 1557 China let the modern port area of Macau to Portugal. Invaders from the Manchu realm established the Qing dynasty, the final Chinese monarchs. China views this time as a time of wealth and tranquility, and for 3 centuries the Manchus imposed an isolationist policy on the nation. Up until the start of the 20th century, the Qing dynasty ruled China. However, in 1911, a series of mass upheavals and the Xinhai Revolution led to China's transition to democracy. 3 New China, 1911, Modern Time. China's pre-imperial history was marked by erratic political power, which was mostly held by religious leaders. In actuality, governors-generals of minor principalities and provinces were free from the power of their monarchs. Out of the 3 dynasties of that era, the Shang dynasty was the most powerful, but it was also unable to prevent the internal conflicts. Eventually made the Shangyan state fall into decay. The imperial dynasties of China span a vast amount of time, from 221 BC to 1911 AD. China rose to become one of the strongest nations in the world and the dominant nation on the Asian continent under the rule of 8 major dynasties, the Qin, Han, Sui, Tan, Song, Yuan, Ming, and Shang. Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi, 221 BC, who unified 7 Chinese kingdoms and conquered many neighboring countries, is credited with initiating the development of China as a single cohesive nation. But in addition to his political contributions to China, Qin Shi Huangdi is most remembered for his renowned terracotta army, which has been guarding his shrine's entrance for almost 2,000 years. China's history bears witness to the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907 AD, whose reign is frequently referred to as the country's golden age. China was invaded by Genghis Khan's Mongols in the 13th century. Since the Mongols established their Yuan dynasty and controlled nearly the all of China, this is considered one of the most terrible periods in Chinese history. The second invasion of China was scheduled for 1644, when the Manchus overthrew the Ming dynasty and took control of the country. The final Chinese imperial dynasty was the Manchu dynasty of Qin. The Xinhai Revolution in 1911 in China led to the fall of the empire and the establishment of the People's Republic. Following the Communist Party of China's triumph over Kuomintang, in 1949, Mao Zedong declared the establishment of the People's Republic of China, PRC. Length, situated in China's north. The Great Wall, possibly the most iconic image of China and its lengthy and colorful history, was first designed in the 3rd century BC by Emperor Qin Shi Huang to keep out barbarian nomad raids. The Ming dynasty, which ruled from the 14th to the 17th century AD, is credited for building the best known and best preserved portion of the Great Wall. The Great Wall grew to serve as a potent symbol of the continuing strength of Chinese civilization, even though it was never able to stop attackers from entering China. While the Great Wall of China dates back to the 5th century BC, many of its fortifications stretch back hundreds of years, to the time when China was split up into several independent kingdoms during the period known as the Warring States period. Around 220 BC, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China under the Qin dynasty, ordered that earlier fortifications between states be removed and a number of existing walls along the northern border be joined into a single system that would extend for more than 10,000 li, a li is about 1/3 of a mile, and protect China against attacks from the north. The 10,000 li long wall, also known as the Wanli Changcheng, was one of the most ambitious construction undertakings in the history of civilization. The project was first led by the well-known Chinese general Meng Tian, who is reported to have employed a vast army of soldiers, prisoners, and commoners as laborers. The wall, which was primarily constructed of stone and earth, extended almost 3,000 kilometers westward into Gansu province from the China Sea port of Hwang. Sections of the wall overlapped at several key locations for optimal security, including as the Badaling portion north of Beijing, which was eventually repaired during the Ming dynasty. The Great Wall rose between 15 and 50 feet from a base, and guard towers were positioned at regular intervals throughout its length. The ramparts at the top of the wall were 12 feet or higher. The Great Wall had guard towers positioned at regular intervals along its length, and it rose between 15 and 50 feet from a base. At least 12 feet separated the ramparts at the summit of the wall. While the Great Wall of China dates back to the 5th century BC, many of its fortifications stretch back hundreds of years, to the time when China was split up into several independent kingdoms during the period known as the Warring States period. Around 220 BC, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China under the Qin dynasty, ordered the removal of prior state-to-state fortifications and the unification of several wall systems that currently straddle the northern border into a unified system that would span more than 10,000 li, or roughly 1/3 of a mile, and defend China against northern invasions. The 10,000 li long wall, also known as the Wanli Changcheng, was one of the most ambitious construction undertakings in the history of civilization. The project was first led by the well-known Chinese general Meng Tian, who is reported to have employed a vast army of soldiers, prisoners, and commoners as laborers. Made mostly of earth with stone, the wall extended over 3,000 miles westward into Gansu province from the China Sea port of Hwang. For optimal security, several parts of the wall overlapped in key locations, such as the Badaling segment, north of Beijing, which was later repaired during the Ming dynasty. From 1368 to 1644 AD, the Ming dynasty controlled China, a period that saw a doubling of China's population. Not only was the Ming dynasty famous for its commerce growth to the outside world, which led to the establishment of cultural relations with the West, but it is also recognized for its world-class porcelain, literature, and drama. The Great Wall rose between 15 and 50 feet from a base, and guard towers were positioned at regular intervals throughout its length. The ramparts at the top of the wall were 12 feet or higher. Were you aware? Around 221 BC, Emperor Qin Shi Huang gave the command to build the Great Wall, and soldiers and prisoners made up the majority of the labor force. Up to 400,000 people are thought to have perished while building the wall, many of whom were laborers who were interred inside the wall. Table of contents. The Imperial Palace of the Qing Dynasty. The first Chinese dynasty to dominate throughout the Middle and Lower Yellow River Valley was the Shang Dynasty. The Qing Dynasty, which ruled over what is now modern-day China and Mongolia, was the final imperial empire in history. In 221 BC, the Qin dynasty unified all of China under their dominion. China was governed by numerous succeeding dynasties for many centuries. Periods under dynastic control are widely used to categorize China's collective history. Central Plain dynasties, United dynasties, and conquest dynasties were the three primary categories of dynasties. The unified dynasties were in charge of uniting China proper, whereas the Central Plain dynasties had their capital cities inside the Central Plain. Chinese dynasties formed by non-Han people are known as conquest dynasties. The first dynasty, known as the Xia, 2100 to 1766 BC, is regarded as semi-legendary. Chinese dynasties. Shang Dynasty, 1766 BC 1047 BC. Modern historians believe that the Shang Dynasty was the earliest Chinese dynasty. Its presence has been verified by historians thanks to the many archaeological sites discovered by the Yellow River. The lower Yellow River was dominated by the dynasty from 1766 BC to 1047 BC. Its capital was Anyang, as it is now. The metallurgy of bronze, jewelry, and armory are linked to the Shang dynasty. King Shang was at the head of a very hierarchical monarchy. Zhou dynasty, 1047 BC to 56 BC. Throughout Chinese history, the Zhou dynasty was one of the most significant. The Eastern Zhou dynasty, which ruled China for 514 years until 256 BC, succeeded the Western Zhou dynasty, which ruled for 275 years, from 1047 BC to 771 BC. The Zhou dynasty gave birth to Taoism and Confucianism and other new ideas including religions such as Moism. The mandate of heaven, which served as the basis for the ruler's authority justification, was also invented by the dynasty. Qin dynasty, 221 BC to 206 BC, with a brief 14-year reign, the Qin dynasty was among the shortest in Chinese history. It was the first Chinese imperial dynasty. As the first emperor, Qin Shi Huangdi founded the dynasty. The autocratic ruler succeeded in uniting all of China and conquering other territories, notably the 7 warring states. The building of the Great Wall of China also began during his reign. Han dynasty, 206 BC to 20 AD. The second dynasty of imperial China was the Han dynasty. It is frequently referred to as China's Golden Age and lasted for more than 4 centuries. The Western Han, 206 BC, 9 AD, and Eastern Han, 25 AD, 220 AD, dynasties are separated. This era saw the invention of paper and the propagation of Confucianism. The Silk Road's inauguration and the enlargement of China's boundaries beyond the Yangtze River were 2 other accomplishments. Qing dynasty, 1644 to 1911. Qing dynasty, 1644 to 1911. The final Chinese dynasty was the Qing. Despite was formed in 1636, it did not control China proper until 1644 to 1661. The Manchu people of Manchuria founded the dynasty, which enjoyed great success in the 18th century. The territories of Taiwan, Tibet, Mongolia, and Xinjiang were added to the Chinese Empire. However, in 1800, rebellions and outside forces caused it to collapse into destitution. The Republic of China took the place of the Qing dynasty. Dynasties that ruled simultaneously. While certain dynasties controlled China as a single, cohesive empire during different eras, other dynasties ruled separate parts of China during other eras. The southern and northern kingdoms, 5 dynasties, 16 kingdoms, 10 kingdoms, and 3 kingdoms were among these divisions. Every dynasty saw the others as illegitimate and themselves as the legitimate. Chinese dynasties in order. Rank. Dynasty name. Years. 1. Shang. 1766 BC, 1076 BC. 2. Zhou. 1047 BC, 256 BC. 3. Qin. 221 BC, 206 BC. 4. Han. 206 BC, 220 AD. 5. Jin. 265-420. 6. 16 Kingdoms. 204-409. 7. Southern and Northern Dynasties. 420-589. 8. Sui. 581-618. 9. Tang. 618-907. 10. 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms. 907-960. 11. Liao. 916-1125. 12. Song. 960-1279. 13. UN. 1279-1368. 14. Ming. 1368-1644. 15. Qing. 1644-1911. The People's Republic of China has a rich and diverse culture that combines elements of other foreign modern and postmodern cultures, as well as traditional Chinese culture. A great deal of priceless cultural artifacts were destroyed or severely damaged during the Cultural Revolution, and many arts and crafts were outlawed. However, from the early 1980s, there have been strong attempts to revitalize China's unique cultural traditions in addition to the official repudiation of those policies. As a result, China's culture is still quite complicated, combining both old customs and cutting-edge innovations in what might seem like a tense yet vibrant fusion. New Chinese history. New China, 1911, modern time. The beginning of XX century in China was notable for the activity of revolutionary forces. The yoke of imperial officials and permanent tax increases caused the unrest in different parts of China. In 1900, Beijing experienced the Boxer Rebellion. The foreigners' quarters were attacked by the insurgents. The only forces that were able to put an end to the rebellion were the combined European expeditionary forces. The imperial power collapsed as a result of the 1911 Xinhai Revolution. The Manchus were compelled to cede the throne by General Yuan Shikai. A constitutional republic was established in 1912, spearheaded by Kuomintang founder Sun Yat-sen. However, China found itself on the verge of Japanese occupation during the Sun Yat-sen and Yuan Shikai power struggle, during which Japan annexed the province of Shandong. One of the most significant moments in Chinese history occurred in 1921 when Mao Zedong founded the Communist Party of China in Shanghai. 5 years later, in 1926, Sun Yat-sen passed away, and the country's historiator of the Kuomintang was chosen Chiang Kai-shek. The Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Statue in Taipei. Chiang Kai-shek. New History of China, Taiwanese soldiers near Memorial Hall, Chiang Kai-shek. China suffered for the next nearly 30 years from the Chiang Kai-shek conflict, which resulted in the First Party's victory. The Japanese, who had left the country upon the surrender, reoccupied the Communist Party under Mao Zedong and the Nationalist Party under the eastern region of China during the Second World War. The People's Republic of China, which is still in existence today, was proclaimed to be established in 1949 by Mao Zedong, the head of the Communist Party of China. Even though modern China is one of the industrialized nations in the world and bravely ushered in the XXI century, or the age of scientific advancement, the Chinese continue to hold their ancient history and respect the customs and traditions established by the ancestors. Chinese philosophies and religions. The three primary schools of philosophy and religion in ancient China were Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. These ideologies have had a significant impact on both ancient and contemporary Chinese society. Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism are regarded as the three pillars of ancient Chinese civilization. As ideologies and faith systems, they had an impact on politics, science, the arts, social structure, and spirituality. Even while there have occasionally been differences between their particular teachings and beliefs, there has also been a lot of overlap. Rather than one tradition dominating and driving away the others, the three schools of thought have shaped society in tandem, occasionally blending together. Comprehending the distinct interplay of these three traditions provides valuable understanding of both contemporary and ancient Chinese society. Confucianism. Confucianism, which is more of a philosophy than a religious religion, was a way of life for the ancient Chinese and still has an impact on Chinese society today. Confucius, the father of Confucianism, lived from 551 to 479 BCE. He was a political leader and philosopher who lived in an era when rival political states were causing traditional Chinese values to decay. He converted more traditional theological teachings into rules for social mores. His teachings provided direction on every aspect of life in ancient China, from family relations and public affairs to educational standards and state governance. According to Confucius, All facets of existence consist of duties owed by individuals to entities and customs meant to illustrate their interdependence. He emphasized humanism in his teachings, which includes treating people how you would like to be treated. He advocated for everyone to carry out their duties and responsibilities with decency and compassion for one another, since this would strengthen the state. Confucius discussed religious practices in addition to all the other rituals that people were obligated to conduct, but he did not address spiritual issues like as mysticism, gods and goddesses, or the afterlife. A philosophy rather than a religion, even though it is often lumped in with other major religions. From 206 BCE until 220 CE, Confucianism emerged as the leading political theory of the Han Dynasty. Confucianism was used by the state to uphold the status quo going ahead since its conservative principles encouraged individuals to preserve their place in social order. Confucius and his teachings continue to have a significant impact on Chinese society's structure, rituals, familial duty and respect, ancestor worship, and self-discipline. Confucianism is an old Chinese philosophy and belief system that served as the basis for a large portion of Chinese culture. From 551 to 479 BCE, Confucius was a philosopher and teacher. His students recorded his teachings on morality, ethics, and good behavior in multiple works, the most significant of which being the Lunyu. Confucianism promotes human-centered ethics and ancestor worship as means of achieving inner serenity. Confucianism's cardinal precept is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There is debate over if Confucianism is a religion. Confucianism is best understood as an ethical guide to life and living with strong character. Yet, Confucianism also began as a revival of an earlier religious tradition. There are no Confucian gods, and Confucius himself is worshipped as a spirit rather than a god. However, there are temples of Confucianism, which are places where important community and civic rituals happen. This debate remains unresolved and many people refer to Confucianism as both a religion and a philosophy. There is debate over if Confucianism is a religion. Confucianism is best understood as an ethical guide to life and living with strong character. Yet, Confucianism also began as a revival of an earlier religious tradition. There are no Confucian gods, and Confucius himself is worshipped as a spirit rather than a god. However, there are temples of Confucianism, which are places where important community and civic rituals happen. This debate remains unresolved and many people refer to Confucianism as both a religion and a philosophy. Confucianism's central thesis is the value of moral integrity, which, via the concept of cosmic harmony, can have an impact on one's environment. The emperor's reign will be kind and peaceful if he is morally faultless. Strays from the old principles lead to war and natural disasters. Ren, or humanity, the virtue that leads to more virtues like humility, respect, and selflessness, is what gives one this moral character. Confucius thought that developing this virtue-driven character required education. He believed that although most people are decent, they occasionally deviate from proper behavior. Rituals in Confucianism were designed to bring about this respectful attitude and create a sense of community within a group. The core of Confucian philosophy is the concept of filial piety, or devotion to family. This devotion can manifest itself in homage to the ancestors, deference to parental authority, or the emperor and his administration being referred to as the Son of Heaven or another familial metaphor. According to Confucian ethics, the family was the most significant social unit, and a society built on family values could only be strengthened. While Confucius gave his name to Confucianism, he was not the first person to discuss many of the important concepts in Confucianism. Rather, he can be understood as someone concerned with the preservation of traditional Chinese knowledge from earlier thinkers. After Confucius' death, several of his disciples compiled his wisdom and carried on his work. The most famous of these disciples were Mencius and Sun Tzu, both of whom developed Confucian thought further. Confucianism remains one of the most influential philosophies in China. During the Han Dynasty, Emperor Wu Di reigned 141 to 87 BCE, made Confucianism the official state ideology. During this time, Confucius schools were established to teach Confucian ethics. Confucianism existed alongside Buddhism and Taoism for several centuries as one of the most important Chinese religions. In the Song dynasty, 960 to 1279 CE, the influence from Buddhism and Taoism brought about Neo-Confucianism, which combined ideas from all three religions. However, in the Qing dynasty, 1644 to 1912 CE, many scholars looked for a return to the older ideas of Confucianism, prompting a Confucian revival. Taoism. Chinese religion Taoism, sometimes known as Daoism, emerged some 2 millennia after Confucianism. Taoism is primarily concerned with the spiritual aspects of existence, particularly the nature of the world, in contrast to Confucianism. The guiding principle of Taoism is roughly translated as the way, which is a harmonious natural order that arises between humans and the world, and that Taoists should strive to achieve. In the Taoist structure of the universe, humans are meant to accept and yield to the Tao and only engage in activities that are logical and compliant with it. This is the idea of Wu Wei, which literally translates to non-action but actually refers to accepting the way things are and not pushing yourself too hard to fulfill your wishes. This sets Taoism apart from Confucianism in another way. Taoists consider government, society, and humanistic morality to be human inventions rather than inherent components of the Tao. Simultaneously, Taoists were drawn to the idea of longevity, that is, the longevity of the human body and soul. A central tenet of Taoist religion is attaining spiritual immortality by merging with nature. Chinese civilization was able to incorporate ideas from both traditions because Taoist and Confucian beliefs are not entirely at odds with one another. Though Taoism had an impact on literature and the arts, science was the field where Taoist influence was greatest. Chinese medicine was influenced by the Taoist emphasis on natural elements and understanding how the natural world functions. Taoists used testing to see how various remedies affected humans and animals, much like scientists do today. Their combined expertise from attempting to extend human lifespan had a significant positive impact on health. Sciences. Buddhism. The third main belief system in ancient China was Buddhism. Siddhartha Gautama, popularly known as the Buddha, established it. He was an Indian who lived in the 6th century BCE. Buddhism is a philosophy that emphasizes gaining profound knowledge and human growth. Through spiritual practice, instruction, and meditation, Buddhists aim to attain enlightenment. They think that nirvana, a blissful state beyond human sorrow, is the path to finding peace and that life is transient, full of misery. Misery, and uncertainty. They also believe in reincarnation. There are numerous sects that emphasize distinct facets of Buddhism in different ways. Theravada Buddhism, which is mostly found in Southern Asia, and Mahayana Buddhism, which is located in East Asia, including China, are the two main sects of Buddhism. In the 1st century CE, Buddhism left India and made its way to China, where it quickly gained popularity. Taoism contributed to Buddhism's rise to prominence in China. Certain aspects of Buddhist practice were like to those of Taoism, and Buddhist monks would bridge the linguistic and cultural divide between Indians and Chinese people by introducing Buddhism to the Chinese through Taoist ideas. Taoists adopted and altered the institutional structure of Buddhism, which had an impact on Taoism as well. Buddhism and Taoism developed rivalry to attract more adherents and political clout, and this rivalry boosted the life of both faiths. As Buddhism spread, its principles combined with those of Taoism and Confucianism to form the foundation of ancient Chinese governance and society. Chinese literature, art, and architecture are examples of its influence. Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism all contributed values and concepts that are still widely accepted in Chinese culture today. The ancient Chinese culture valued all three of these philosophies highly and applied their various teachings to various aspects of daily life, despite the variations and often incongruous aspects among them.